Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric. I got a fun and random episode for you guys this Friday because of course in my collection I'm always adding new and random things, and a Bandai WonderSwan Swan Crystal with an IPS screen mod has come through and joined the permanent collection of my oddities and esoteric hardware. And I've always wanted to get a Bandai WonderSwan and WonderSwan Color. It's such a fun, exclusive Japanese handheld that came out in 1999. I couldn't resist when the opportunity was presented to itself, and this one is from Dorfus, a viewer of the channel. I don't care what people say about him, I think he's alright. But the Bandai WonderSwan is one of those systems that so few people seem to really know too much about, and that is because it was a Japanese exclusive, and some of its best games were in Japanese only until recently where it got some translation. Something like Final Fantasy II here, a remake of the original game, is now 100% playable in English, and I can't wait to get further into this. And you'll see here with this IPS screen mod, you can change the color around on the screen, mostly useful for the black and white games because the Bandai WonderSwan had both a black and white variant as well as a color variant. The color games are going to be a little bit more fun as far as the vibrancy is concerned, but some of the black and white games are actually some of the better games on the system. If you take a look at this Swan Crystal right here, the button layout on this is so confusing if you just see it in photos, because there are two completely different D-pads on the hardware, and this system will work in both a horizontal and vertical or tate orientation. You'll see here these four buttons make up a D-pad, and there's also another D-pad at the top, which will become on the left of the system once you actually turn it in your hand. Sound button, start button, a power button that's the hardest thing in the world to actually press, and an A and B button are what you get on the WonderSwan. But if you take a look here, something like Klonoa, this is a game that generally plays in the horizontal screen orientation. 90% of the time you're going to be playing this just like you would a Game Boy Advance with it horizontal in your hands. But some levels actually play around with the screen orientation will make you actually change how you hold the WonderSwan in your hand. You go to tate mode here, and now that top vertical D-pad becomes the leftmost D-pad, and the normal D-pad in horizontal mode become your B and A buttons. It's so confusing to figure out when you first see it, but it becomes second nature from there. And this is just an awesome handheld developed by Gunpey Yokoi, who developed the Game Boy for Nintendo. This is basically taking that Nintendo Game Boy ethos and moving it further into the future. Some games will just be 100% tate mode, and it does really use a good amount of the screen real estate. Something like Rainbow Islands here, it has been translated into English by fans and is 100% playable. Use the vertical screen space orientation to show you more of the actual play field, and in practice and execution this just works and plays so much different than any other handheld I've ever had before. So I'm super excited to have something like this in my collection. We're just going to be going over the hardware and some of my favorite games. If you want a bigger like 30-minute WonderSwan Bible, leave me a comment down below. I'm thinking about doing it, but this is just kind of to see what sort of interest is out there. But WonderSwan in tate mode just works for what it wants to do, but I died there. Trust me, playing games on camera is not an easy thing. Now taking a look at cartridges for themselves, it is a fun thing to collect for the WonderSwan. The cartridges are a good time. I've only got some loose ones right now, but I think I might pick up a couple box copies of some of my favorite games on the system, stuff like Daimaki Yamura. I'd love to have that actually on my shelves. But I love that you get this transparent, clear crystal plastic as well. You kind of just get to see a little bit of the PCB and some of the stickers they popped on them. It isn't the biggest card of all time, it's certainly no Neo Geo, but it is fun to see and to take a look at. But there's some strange things about the WonderSwan as well, including how to actually get headphones out of it, because Sammy, the company that merged with Sega, made the adapter to have headphones on the system. Because by default there's absolutely no headphone jack on the console, it is such a very strange thing. But I have this new old stock, never been used headphone adapter, and it comes with the cheapest pair of earpods I have ever felt. This is even worse than when an airline would give you these back in the day for free. They've never been used and it's fun to have in the collection, but wow, I'm never going to actually try them. And if you take a look around the side here, you're going to see the extension port, and this is where you need to hook the headphones into. There are no other ports on the WonderSwan, Swan Color, or Swan Crystal like we see here. If we take a look around at all of the different sides, there's absolutely no place to hook headphones in whatsoever. Headphone jacks are not expensive, so it's really weird that they didn't put it here on the WonderSwan, maybe just to sell more devices. But if you actually want to use headphones with this handheld, this is how it looks. You have this entire almost wall wart coming out of the side of the WonderSwan into that extension port, and it definitely gets in the way of your hands. It does not help make it any more comfortable. It's such a weird design decision, but it's fun to look at in 2023. Now around the back you're going to see this little bump here which actually is comfortable underneath your fingers, and there's a little release tab. One of the design ethos for the WonderSwan is they want it to be very battery efficient. This takes one AA battery and it lasts for over 30 hours in gameplay. I put this Analogue in like 2 months ago and my WonderSwan still has plenty of battery. I probably played it for like 10 or 12 hours at this point in time, so it's a really fun thing, and I honestly love how it just clips in. It's definitely a good feel in the hand, a little bit cheaper plastics than something like the Game Boy Advance, but it does work. And you'll see here I have a Flash Masta cart as well, so I can add other games onto it, including all of those English translations. Now I'll push the power button again, one of the hardest things to do on the entire WonderSwan, and you will see we do get into that menu. And the great thing about the Flash Masta is that it is very quick. It goes like 5 to 10 seconds to get you from the menu to into the game. And that's what I do want to talk about, are some of the Bandai WonderSwan games, because for such a random and esoteric library, it actually does have a lot of fun things to play. But I'm going to be capturing this via my MiSTer FPGA as well as my Analogue Pocket, because the WonderSwan doesn't have any native video out, so we're just going to do it in a different manner. And for me, as far as the black and white portion of the WonderSwan is concerned, no game defines the hardware more than Engacho does, both as a weird factor as well as just the overall vibe. Music's great, listen to what it sounds like. I'll be right back. And Gacho's got some great music, and I wanted you to get a little bit of a taste of that 8-bit beat boot vibe going on. But this game just has such a weird sense of humor. Obviously it's a puzzle game where you need to navigate around, but it's what happens when you lose that's absolutely hilarious. This giant butt attacks you, you get Gacho on the screen, and you are now underneath a pile of poop. That is just how the game works. But moving over to the color side, I absolutely love the actual colors on the Bandai WonderSwan. So many of them are so vibrant. It has basically like a better than Game Boy Color, not as good as Game Boy Advance feel to the graphics. And when you get to the color section of the WonderSwan and you have some clean HDMI out, some way to play, you will see that there are some amazing colors to be had here. Something like Rhythm Rider Kurobakan is an awesome rhythm game, but the only unfortunate part is if you're actually playing this via Analogue Pocket or MiSTer FPGA, the timing gets completely out of whack because the actual WonderSwan runs in 75 Hz as a refresh ratio, so when that does get scaled around to 60 Hz, the timing completely gets corrupted, at least as far as how I can play it. If I play this on real hardware, it becomes much easier, which is one of the reasons why having a WonderSwan around is a ton of fun. But moving over to something like Mr. Driller on the color side, this is an iconic game in an iconic franchise, and the WonderSwan color version is one of the best versions of Mr. Driller ever. And I really just wanted to show you guys a couple examples of games in the hardware today to see if you want to get a closer look of that WonderSwan Bible. So definitely comment down below and tell me if you want that 30-minute video going over some of the best games on the library. Because I haven't had the actual WonderSwan hardware for that long, but I've been playing a lot of the games for years via software emulation and now FPGA. And it is something I think more fans of gaming should get into, especially with all of these awesome translations that we now have available, especially for some of the Final Fantasy remakes. It is really that good. But there's Mega Man games on this as well that have that same Mega Man action, and again they have been translated over to full English. For the longest time the WonderSwan library was really impenetrable if it wasn't an action platformer or puzzle game, because a lot of them did have deep stories and mechanics that you 100% had to understand Japanese to be able to enjoy. But in recent years, so many fans have done so many great translations. A lot of the games that people wanted to check out but weren't able to do so because they didn't speak Japanese are now accessible to everybody else. And there's different types of games as well, like the puzzle games here. And this is a variation of Gunpey, which was named for Gunpey Yokoi, who developed the hardware. But this one involves pandas and not the Wild Western theme. I just love how this panda kind of lazily rolls into the frame. But basically all you need to do is make a pattern across the screen to knock the ropes out. It is the simplest game in execution, but when you actually get further into it, it becomes so difficult and so addictive, you realize you've been playing this game for 45 minutes and you have no idea where the time went. And that's the great thing about the WonderSwan. It's a perfect handheld for 10-15 minute gaming sessions, but then it gives you something like a fully translated Final Fantasy II. It also has a really awesome port of Golden Axe from Sega. That's right, Sega did publish games for the Bandai WonderSwan, and this is a really fun 8-bit looking version of the Golden Axe we all know and love. And that's really the thing about the WonderSwan. The library is actually really unique, really interesting, and really varied. It gives you so many different things to do. And with an Analogue Pocket, with MiSTer FPGA, with software emulation on Steam Deck, or with original WonderSwan hardware, it is wholly worth looking at the library that is here. You're gonna find a ton of fun games to play, and you may end up finding some of your best favorite handheld games of all time on the WonderSwan, because this console has gone from being completely inaccessible, something that you really need to import, to something that now has so many translations and guides available for it. You'd be hard pressed not to be able to enjoy the Bandai WonderSwan library. And that's why I did this little video. I've been talking about WonderSwan a little bit more on the channel because it's something that I am just getting into in real hardware after playing around with it via emulation for the longest time. So again, if you want that big 30-minute Bible video with all the best games to play, just tell me down below, and depending on how this video does, I will 100% do it or not do it. But the Bandai WonderSwan color with an IPS mod with a flash cart is some of the most fun handheld gaming you can have if you've kind of already gone through the DS, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and Game Gear library, because there were so many other things to have out there that weren't released in the US, and the Bandai WonderSwan's one of them. Sure that if you own one, tell me down below, but we are done, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.